It took a few episodes of some slightly less interesting Earth or Hell-based plots and one fantastic one in space, but we finally arrived at the meat and bones of Invincible Season 4, the beginning of the Viltrumite War, and holy hell was this a fantastic beginning. The episode features one of the most brutal things that I've ever witnessed on screen. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, become a member in the Noble tier above for early access to videos, and the King tier for a special shout out. Thanks to these King tier members for the extra support. The last episode ended with Nolan and Alan arriving on Earth, and this episode did not disappoint with how it handled that, specifically with how the series handles Nolan's character. He's so incredibly complex, like he was a mass murderer, terrorist, monster supervillain, but in the grand scheme of the universe and the Viltrum Empire, he's kind of a pretty good guy at this point. But still, this episode handles Nolan's quote-unquote redemption incredibly well. Like, sure, in the grand scheme of the universe, Nolan can be redeemed, but this isn't the universe. Here, he's on Earth. Here, he's a monster, and this is a change from the comics that I do want to see. I do not want to see Nolan ever re-embraced by this version of Debbie. She's a far more developed character here. Her relationship with Paul is a lot more developed. I kind of like him. Debbie is a full-fledged three-dimensional character who I don't think should or will ever take Nolan back, because Nolan on Earth does not deserve redemption. He doesn't deserve to be taken back. I liked Mark and Nolan's talk in the beginning of the episode, but Nolan and Debbie's reunion was exceptional. The series has done a really good job in making me empathize with Nolan, but only when separated from Earth. In this scene, Nolan's speech is all well and good, but it just falls apart when Debbie responds. Debbie's voice actress, Sandra Oh, gives one of the best performances in the series as she puts Omni-Man's cruelty, his redemption, into perspective. It's powerful and dark, yet again proving how much of an upgraded character Debbie is compared to the comics. Probably the show's single biggest upgrade in terms of characters. And this goes on to affect Nolan throughout the episode, like he becomes noticeably depressed, almost like he was genuinely convinced he'd be forgiven, taken back with open arms. They even cut back to a moment where Nolan and Debbie are flirting on a date years ago, and it just feels like he genuinely wanted Debbie back and is depressed that that didn't happen. But in all honesty, Nolan would have to be crazy to expect something like that. And Nolan has been forgiven by Alan, by the space racer, by the coalition of planets, but not by Debbie. And again, he doesn't deserve to be, which is all the more interesting. Even this scene with Art connects to this. It's an original scene to the show. In the comics, Art is actually hurt that Nolan doesn't visit him. Here, it's the opposite. He's terrified that Nolan came to visit, and that's so much more realistic to the situation. I really like the scene between Nolan and Art telling him he makes suits for heroes. Nolan was genuinely hurt by that. It's incredible writing in one of the more nuanced redemption arcs that I've ever witnessed. We're then introduced to Tech Jacket in a decently fun scene that feels like a crossover moment with another show that doesn't exist. And here comes the controversial moment that I've talked about before, where Tech Jacket is revealed, now officially, to be gender bent to Zoe. Like I said in a previous video, I personally was never a fan of Tech Jacket because I never read his comics, but I do understand anyone who is a fan and is bummed about this change. I personally don't really mind. I will say there is a moment where Oliver and Zoe meet and they look around the same age, at least physically. The idea did pop into my head that maybe, aside for diversity, because there's literally no other females, they wanted to gender bend her in order to pair her up with Oliver, and I'm not really against that idea unless he vastly outages her, which is probably what's going to happen. But just outside of the gender bend, I really was not impressed by Tech Jacket in this episode. Like, she didn't get anything to do. All she really did was shoot at Viltrumites, but miss, and immediately get incredibly damaged on her forehead protrusion. This didn't exactly convince me that she's a strong weapon against Viltrumites because she didn't seem to be keeping up at all. The only reasons that I know that she is because she defeated one of the Invincibles last season, and we were told that she is in this season. The rest of the first half of the episode leading into them going off to space was fantastic. The episode had a general uneasy feeling to it, a genuine feeling of dread that we're leading into. Mark's talk with Debbie was great, and Oliver's speech to convince them that he should go was even better. The episode had some really top-notch voice performances, and this, by Oliver's actor, was most certainly one of them. The dinner scene was nice, with some fitting music that added to this bittersweet, dreadful feeling, something Eve said in their following scene. Things are feeling like they're about to change, and not for the better. It's hard to explain, but this calm before the storm feeling of the first half of this episode was done so incredibly well. It really immersed me into the feeling of what it feels like to go off to war, to risk something good for something better. The final goodbyes are effective. Eve never tells Mark that she's pregnant, but I do get it. Like, it makes a lot of sense. She doesn't want him to be distracted, and that would be distracting. They then go off to space, and Cecil says that this is the first time that Earth has had no Viltrumites in over 20 years. That's not true, right? Like when Mark went to Thraxa, was the same not true? Was there a Viltrumite on Earth? I don't think so. Anyway, I pretty much already talked about everything on the ship, but then shit really hits the fan when that ship is destroyed. Tensions rise and you really feel it. The stakes just always feel so much higher whenever Viltrumites are involved. The moment where Conquest is revealed and Mark looks over and says no way with this music in the background is just so anxiety inducing. I will say the fights we get here in space outside of the ship aren't exactly very good. The animation is a bit lacking, it's not overly exciting. Like I said, I was disappointed by Tech Jacket in particular because all she does was shoot and miss, and is kind of like Oliver in that she can't really keep up. Speaking of, Conquest almost killing Oliver was brutal, and it made it genuinely exciting when Omni-Man stopped it. From there, the fights are brutal, and it's genuinely awesome to see Invincible fighting Conquest. Recurring rivalries are the best, but it's only when we enter the nearby planet that things get really good. Oliver enters the atmosphere to breathe, and Conquest shows up right behind him like a terrifying monster. Invincible stops him, and you can pinpoint this exact moment where the animation budget rises. Oliver's hair starts flowing more, the background becomes nicer, the characters begin moving a bit more. Invincible versus Conquest round 2 is not quite on the level of their first fight, but it's also an entirely different beast. Mark simply tries to choke Conquest out, while taking beating after beating as Conquest tries to get him off, which made for just a very unique fight, something different than just two Supermen punching each other. It's this ticking time bomb where Mark has to just keep going, just hold on, just keep on choking him out for as long as possible, just take hit after hit after hit until Conquest just stops breathing. The problem is that Conquest just doesn't let up. It takes him so goddamn long to go out that it makes the scene feel so, again, anxiety inducing, but it's riveting. I was screaming at my screen, just die already, just go out, just fall. And then it just got more and more brutal. Conquest stabs right through Mark and begins pulling out his entrails, removing his insides like carving an animal, and it just keeps going. I'm not kidding when I say this is one of the most brutal things I've ever seen on TV. Like just imagining the trauma and the pain, which you can really hear in Mark's voice. Slowly feeling your insides being torn out of you and yet you just can't let go. Mark is moments away from killing Conquest, but he just won't die. This moment is in the comics, but Conquest pulling out his entrails was just like one panel. Here, it just keeps on going. It's like a full 2 minutes, and it's the most brutal 2 minutes I've ever seen. When Conquest finally succumbs, I couldn't tell you how much of a satisfying moment that was. How much of a relief that was, not just for Mark, obviously, but for me as an audience member. And I know Mark will eventually be fine. I've read the comics, and this show is called Invincible. I know Mark's not going to die, but that doesn't change how the scene made me feel. Mark's suffering was put on full display, and the brutality was almost too much for me to watch. But wow, did it make for some damn good television. Conquest just never disappoints, but I never want to see him again. All in all, this episode was incredible, as I expected it to be. A fantastic first half, calm before the storm, that expertly explores Nolan's redemption, Debbie's character, and the dreadful feeling of things changing for the worse and going off to war, followed by an exciting, action-packed second half that delivered one of the most brutal moments I have ever seen, or maybe the single most. It's not a perfect episode, but I don't think it has enough flaws to lower the rating from a well-deserved 10 out of 10. The season's second half, the Viltrumite War, is bound to be something special. Thanks for watching.